Welcome to Transgender. I'm Joe and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter. Have we ever got a treat for you today? Now, we've been doing our podcast for over a year and a half. Some of our best moments came in those initial episodes. We would like to revisit one of these early episodes because we think you're going to get a lot out of it. We've also had a lot of technological advances since then. Back in those early days, it was really hard to hear some of those initial podcasts. When I was playing this in the car, I had to turn the volume all the way up to the top of the volume in my car. Well, we've fixed that since then.
We also are going to have an update for you at the end because as I listened to it, I realized that a lot of things for me personally have changed, and I want to share that with you as well.
We'll see you on the other side.
We're going to be talking about the 5 stages of grief, and there are 5 stages, and so I wanted to start with the first stage.
Well, and before we even get into that, we should talk about where these come from. This is well known. Anytime we talk about grief, we always go back to the seminal book was by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She introduced the 5 stages of grief model back in 1969 in her book On Death and Dying. And this work has really informed everything that we have talked about since then on grief. And you're very familiar with the 5 stages of grief. Let's just briefly go through them, and then we'll talk through how they manifested in our lives and in our own stories. Denial, number 1, and anger, number 2. That's our flight or fight response, that when something negative happens, we either want to run away or we want to run right into it and go fight it. That doesn't work when you're dealing with grief because you can't change how things happen. So then that brings us to the next one. Number 3 is bargaining. You try to see, well, can I change what happened? Can I change the outcome somehow?
Let's negotiate.
Let's see what we can do. If I give up this thing, can I get the thing back again? And when that doesn't work, then we move to depression because we realize it's never going to come back, and there's always going to be an emptiness. It's never going to be quite like it was. It's never going to be full again in the same way that it was. And when you finally break through that, then that brings us to the 5th stage, and that is acceptance.
Now, I want to say, starting with me, but just about everyone I know, doesn't necessarily accept or experience all 5 stages. And so I thought for a while, laughed and talked about it. And the first thing I thought of was, well, that's a new thing, but let's see how it plays out. I'm not so sure this is really going to happen. This is something that Raya might consider. This is something that she's going to try out. But, she's got a family. She's got 7 kids, and I'm not so sure she's going to walk away from that. And she's got a bright future with the company that I started that she's going to take over. So she may not go through this. I'm going to take a wait and see attitude, which I guess is some form of denial.
I don't know. I think you don't ever know with that. I think at that point that was probably the right attitude to have, and because you don't ever know. And in fact, even for me, as the person coming out, I didn't know. Is this something that, the way I always think of it is, it's like a dam holding back water, and when you open it up, either water's coming out or it's not. And I thought, I don't know. I've never done this before, but I put a lot of energy into holding all of this back. I'm going to try it for a little bit, opening it up and seeing what comes out. And it could be that the pressure was not as much as I thought that it was. And of course, it ended up being way more than I ever expected.
Sure.
It was a lot more. But as you know, I have done a lot of things in my life where I get all excited about an idea and I think that this is going to be the thing. And a few months later, it kind of goes away. And you've done the same thing.
Many times.
I've gotten that from you, I think, that we both get really excited about something. And there's a few things like this podcast that have made it through the initial excitement. And now we're really going with it. But there have been a lot of things through the years that both you and I have done that we thought this is going to be the next big thing, and
Like
it
writing
ends
my
up
novel?
or anything, all sorts of things that we've done. And the next idea of what's going to happen, I was going to start a rock and roll band, and that didn't happen, and all
Well, it
sorts of
worked for
things.
me.
Yeah, it did work for you.
I worked my
So
way through college playing in a rock group.
you were a rock star. That's how you met Mom.
That's
Well,
exactly right.
in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
So we didn't know at that point. And really, for you, your grief didn't have anything to do so much with me. It was easy for you to deal with me. The surprise for you was that your grief came outside of our individual relationship.
Yes, it did. The thing is with my grief, where my grief came in, there was denial to begin with. There was denial saying, well, like I mentioned before, well, let's just see how this is going to play out. I don't think this really is going to happen. That's denial of myself saying that, not to you saying, no, you're not going to do this. Now, you may react differently. Maybe somebody else came out to you and you're saying, oh, no, forget that. You're not going to do that. And that could be denial, or it could say, somebody else just tried to talk you into that. Just get some sense in yourself there, And but that wasn't the reaction I had. That doesn't make my reaction the right one. It makes it just the one that I had. So for me, denial was there, but in a little bit different form.
And then I don't know if you ever experienced too with anger. Did you experience some anger? Would you say? Do you feel like you had that?
Not so much. No, I really didn't think. No, I never thought. I thought of it more as a sickness. And so I want to help you. I think this is the first time I've said that or actually vocalized it. I've never thought that way, but I think that's probably the way I looked at it. As I'm not rejecting you. I'm rejecting your ideas possibly because I think you're off the wrong track. It's sort of like if you didn't agree with me politically, well, you're wrong. And I can try to put you on the right track. But that wasn't necessarily anger. It was disappointment, maybe? That's not right either. It was a denial of the not acceptance kind of thing, but it was very soft.
It could have been just that you went into sort of salesperson mode, that in sales, they always teach you never disagree with the person. And I have rarely ever seen you flat out disagree with somebody. And maybe that's all that it was, is that you always wanted to be as agreeable with me as you could in order to maintain the relationship.
Maybe.
But I never saw you come back to me and say anything about you're wrong. All that I ever heard from you to me was support. But where I know it impacted you was once I became public, once I said this is going to happen and it came out, now that put you in the position that you had to decide how were you going to interact with me, because now if you were sharing my story with somebody that doesn't agree, now you have to take a side. You have to say either I stand with her or, you know what, I think what he's doing is wrong. In either one of those, if you choose the path of I stand with her, that could lose you a friend. And if you choose the path of, well, I think that what he's doing is wrong, that could lose you a child, or at least a relationship. That would certainly have put a strain on things. That would have made it very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to choose a side. And I imagine there were probably times where you thought, I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to stand up for a decision that's not even my decision.
I think that makes some sense. But I think the hardest thing for me was going public with what you were doing. that was a difficult thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I didn't want to tell anybody. I don't know how long a long time was, but it was, well, it was certainly weeks, maybe months, that I never said anything to anybody. And then I finally told one of my friends. And his first reaction, he looked at me, his eyes got big and wide, and he said, "Holy shit!"
Can we say that?
Yeah. Well, he did. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was, and it was sort of like, his reaction was, well, I couldn't possibly go through something like that. Wow, you got a big thing there. And he was probably right. And then it was after that, I think the next person I told was either my best friend from the military or Fred. Probably Fred.
Mm-hmm. Another friend that you know from the Vets Club.
Yeah.
But you didn't serve with him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He knew you since you were born. He's been a close friend of the family.
They are my godparents.
That's exactly right. And his reaction when I told him was about like my reaction when you told me. He didn't react negatively or come out with an exclamation, expletive. He came out with a soft acceptance kind of thing. And I think you saw that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't go through those same steps we do, but maybe they do in a softer form. Anyway, that was in that area. The anger thing really was something I probably did skip. If I really had to say, where was it? I can't really find it.
I think that Mom and my sister had that more. I think that both of them experienced that. And at some point we'll have
and
them
your brother-in-law.
on. Yes. Mm-hmm. It was hard. It was hard for them. And we don't think of that. And I'm sure I've talked about this on this podcast before, but when I first transitioned, I had a friend that I was telling some of these stories here. Well, my mom is having a difficult time with this. And my friend said to me, "That's so wrong. Why can't she just accept you for who you are?" And I said, do you think that gender matters? I think that gender matters because if it didn't matter, I wouldn't have to do that. But the same reason why I have to do it is the same reason why she's grieving. Because gender does matter. And so for her, she had known me for 40 years as her son. And all of a sudden I was changing and not being the same person, and certainly going through an awkward period at the beginning. I certainly hope that I'm through that awkward period now. But at the beginning, it's very awkward. And I did my best, and I think I did a good job right away. But even still, it's awkward and it's difficult. And I'm having to, I'm wearing wigs now, and I'm having to, learn how to dress differently, and everything. And lots of things that I would do didn't quite work. And I'm sure in that moment, she thought, "Oh, I wish that I could just have the old you back again."
Yep. Well, I thought that too. I lost a son. That's grieving.
Mm-hmm.
I was really proud of the fact that I had a son and a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And one who was going to take over the company. And that didn't turn out. And that was definitely grieving for me. That was a big disappointment, because not only could I see you as taking over the company and running the company and owning the company, but passing it on to my grandchildren. And it didn't turn out that way.
It didn't. But we have, I think, a good story that has come from this, in that the company now, so it's my ex that took over the company now,
Yeah.
and it will end up staying in the family, and it will end up being your grandchildren in the end, just not quite how you thought it was going to be.
That's true.
It doesn't always work out so good like that, though. In our circumstance, it did, and we're very grateful for that. But lots of times it doesn't. I have a friend. I met him online. He's from Romania. He lives in Romania right now, but he is a gay man. And in Romania, it is much, much less accepting of LGBTQ issues than it is here in the United States. And he will frequently tell me, and I know him mostly by text, but he will frequently tell me how his mother is just pleading with him, begging him to date a girl. And she went through all of these stages. First, she denied, "You're not really gay. No, 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 you're not gay. That's just your own, whatever. That's your own ideas. It's just a thing. But that will go away. No, no. You just let it go. And eventually you're going to be the good straight boy that I've always wanted you to be." And in some ways, she's still there. But then she's gone through some anger as well, that she thinks, how dare you turn your back on, I don't know, he's only reported to me, turn your back on God or turn your back on the family or any of these things. And he says, "Mom, I can't do anything. I can't change who I am. This will never go away. I'm never going to be attracted to girls, and I'm never going to be able to turn off my attraction to guys." And so now she's in the third stage where she's trying to bargain. Well, maybe if you just find a good girl and settle down, maybe you could. And she comes up with this thing or that thing and keeps saying there's no bargain that's going to work. And that's how it goes so often with bargaining, is that we try to find some middle ground, but they're usually in an issue of grief, there's usually no middle ground to be had. Just like when somebody passes away, there is no middle ground.
You may remember that we bargained with you quite a bit. I think that was the stage that I spent the most time in, is the bargaining stage, because I can remember we said, well, we're going to be going down south for the winter. Why don't you just go over to our house and stay in our house for a couple of months while we're gone? And then you can dress up there the way you want and all that. And then when you leave the house, you go back to being Ryan. And you don't remember that. That yeah. And you said, well, I'll try that. And you did it for a couple of months.
So I'm going to jump in here for a minute here, because this is a really important story. But I would like to model something on the podcast about relationships and how, sometimes in relationships, there's times where we need to have where we need to say, something happened that just hurt. And I have to say, hearing my old name really hurts. It's hard for me to hear that. And you wouldn't think that.
And I knew
even in telling the story.
I knew that, but I thought I had to add it to the story because that's what I was saying to you all the time. And I was saying, try it this way, but just do it behind closed doors.
And so even now, in times where we're telling that story, let's see if we can find ways to tell it without that part, because it's difficult for me. And it was difficult then. And that's part of the grieving process, is that there's so much emotion that goes through in all of those things. There's so much that comes up. And that's exactly what I thought too. Now, I didn't think of that. I was very grateful for that time because in my marriage, we had an agreement that, okay, well, we knew this was never a surprise from my ex. She knew the whole time. She knew within 6 months of us being married that this was an issue. It comes out.
Really?
Yeah, she didn't know, and I didn't know exactly what the issue was, but we knew the broad contours of the kinds of things that were struggles for me. And so then by the time we got through to the place where I said, I can't put this off anymore. I don't know what else to do. She said, look, if you're going to experiment with cross-dressing, I guess that's where you're at right now. I can't stop you from doing that, but please don't do it in the house. And so, well, if I can't do it in the house, then where do I go? How does that work? There's nowhere else to go. And that was the point where you said, this is how I took it, is you said, we're leaving for a couple months. At that time, it was only 2 months. You said, we're leaving for a couple months. You come in and use our house. And then while you're there, you try it out and see how it's working. I didn't think that for you that it was so much bargaining, but for me,
It was bargaining because it was saying, try this out and you're going to discover this isn't for you. That's what I thought was going to happen.
I
and
sure
as a
wanted
bonus,
that.
you were able to take care of the cat.
Yes, I was. And I wanted that also. And in fact, I thought that's what did happen. As I got to the end, we were at, so it was January and February, and it was the middle of February. And I thought, okay, we're coming up to the end here. This feels really right, but I can't afford the cost. Mm-hmm. And at that point I said, I can't pay the cost. So I'm going to go back. And we all thought, okay, well, there it is. You tried and it didn't work out.
Yeah, we did.
And it was about a month and a half that I was a black hole after that, because now I had experienced just a little taste of what it was like to live how I wanted to.
Uh-huh.
And it made things so much worse when I tried to go back. And that's what ultimately, that little taste was enough to say, I can't keep living how I was living.
And I remember you said to me, which I think every person out there who comes out says or knows in their heart, they wouldn't choose this. They wouldn't say, well, I could be this or I could be that. And, I think I'm going to be gay. I think that would let me just try that for a while.
Wouldn't that just be wonderful?
Yeah, exactly. I
had
don't think
all of
anybody...
society judge me, and I had people look towards me and think, oh, wow, there's a strange person. And if I had people constantly, if I always had to have threats of, well, somebody might want to beat me up, or if I go there and if I tell the wrong person, that sounds like a really good lifestyle.
I know. I remember you said that. You said that more than once. You said, I wouldn't choose this. And I think that's the way everybody is. They don't choose it. They realize it's the only answer. It's the only answer. And, hey, we're in a country that is pushing the pursuit of happiness, right? And we need to push the pursuit of happiness. We have that right.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Exactly.
And actually, that brings up a good point. And so I do not expect that everybody in the audience, you might be listening right now, and you might not agree. We want you here. You are welcome here if you do not agree, because we want you to still have positive relationships, even if you are not accepting of the choice that your LGBTQ son or daughter or family member has made, but you want to preserve that relationship. And I just want to say that even if it is not a choice, that doesn't automatically mean that it's okay. And even if it is a choice, that wouldn't automatically mean that it's not okay. If it was of choice, and I think we know that there are aspects of both, but in general, most of it seems pretty hard to escape when most of us fight it so hard and so hard and so hard. And then we finally say, I can't fight this any longer. That's not really a choice. It's a choice to stop fighting, but it's not really a choice to pick up the thing. But even if it was a choice, the life that I'm living now, it makes me happy. I am much, much happier now. I am much brighter and more full of joy than I was beforehand, because I don't have to hold back pieces of myself. And by the same token, even if you accept that it's not a choice, it's completely not a choice, we understand that we all struggle with things that are not a choice. It might be not a choice for somebody to be an alcoholic, but that doesn't mean that they can just say, well, therefore I get to just live however I want to. There's all things that we have to deal with that we wish we didn't have to deal with. But with LGBTQ issues, it's a lot harder, because not only can you not turn it off, but imagine if I said to you, you can never have a partner that you're attracted to for the rest of your life. You can never be sexually intimate with anyone ever again, ever, because of a belief that I have that I'm imposing on you. Can you imagine what it would be like to live that way?
That's the way it was when I was 12 years old.
That's good to know.
It wasn't forever, but it seemed like forever.
So, with all of us, we go through that grieving.
Well, that was quite an interesting lesson for me to hear that again after recording it and giving everybody my thoughts of where I thought I stood or where I know I stood. I tried to be honest about it and really express my feelings to all of you out there listening and also to you, Raya, and let you know what I was thinking and where I was. But here's the update. Not only the fact that I feel I've reached total acceptance, but I'm actually proud of being able to shout this out, to tell people, hey, I've got this podcast and it's really great. And my daughter and I do it and I'm so excited about it. Whenever a situation comes along, not only do I not care that somebody knows that I have a transgender daughter, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of what we have done together with this podcast. I just feel the same freedom that you felt in coming out. For someone else, if you are out there and you have one of your siblings who happens to be LGBTQ, when you reach this point, you're going to be so happy. You're going to be so comfortable realizing, yes, I lost a son, but I gained a daughter. And the other thing I really need to share is it's the same person inside. It's the same head. That relationship that we had before was wonderful. The one we have now is even stronger. To go through something that is traumatic for both of us and then come out the other side and say, I love you even more.
When you and I started this podcast, we actually started a year before we posted our first podcast. We were getting everything ready and we started a few podcasts. We recorded a few. And this was actually one of our discussions that we had before we even posted our first podcast. We went back and then re-edited it and then posted it as one of those early ones. When you and I first started this, I think we both felt like we had a pretty good relationship.
Yes.
But we did not realize how much doing this together would end up improving our relationship. How by spending this time together for you and I, we would end up investing in our relationship and coming out that much stronger. Now, neither one of us felt like it was weak beforehand, but that much stronger. We can see even there in that moment that we had that conversation about my old name. And I can't imagine you ever sharing the story in that way. Now we've come so far that doesn't sound like you because you have changed a lot since then. Now, when you tell a story about me and my childhood, you automatically tell the story with she, her pronouns because you know how much that means to me. And that means so much to me that you understand how much that means to me.
If you think that this means something to you, we would like to ask you to share it with maybe one of your parents, maybe both of your parents, maybe your closest friend. Find people out there that feel as though they're accepting, but they're not there yet. We'd like to encourage you to listen to this because I think it'll make a difference, not just in their life, but your life too. And you will end up with a closer relationship. And with that, we'll see you Monday.